Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to continue our study on the Proverbs 31 wife. And last time we discussed how the woman is seen as noble, and the reason she's seen as noble is, first of all, her relationship with the Father. And so, the Father in heaven. So basically, we looked at how God credits anyone noble that examines his word, that reads his word, applies his word, like the Bereans in Acts 17:10 and 11, as we mentioned before. Okay, so that's where, we want to look at this woman because there's a reason she's in here. And I researched more about who exactly is this woman. Is she someone that has a name, you know? And what I found was this is actually a symbolism of a model example of a woman of God. And not to be taken legalistically, like a list of things to do. If we're not doing this checklist, then we are not a woman of God. That is not how this is supposed to be considered. It's mostly, really looking at an example, of a woman who God honored as an example and symbolism and just seeing how we can imitate. And a lot of us have these qualities. We may not even realize what we're doing daily. We work to help our families. We support them. We've, held babies in our arms, and we've had to have strong arms and, carry a load, whether it's doing laundry or, the things we do around the house, as well as what we do in business, and trying to balance, the things that we have to do, which is not always easy. But starting with God definitely helps us. So this is something I really admire about this Proverbs 31 woman. So at the end of Proverbs 31, it says, she is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. All right. And so, really, I'm looking at her strength and dignity that she's clothed with. It's not about her clothes, her materialism. Obviously she had money because she was able to buy a vineyard and invest in fields and yarn and all this sewing material, and she had servants, but it says she's clothed with strength and dignity, and then because of that she can laugh at the days to come. She speaks with wisdom, and these things show integrity. These things show, a woman of God, and how there is nothing that she lacks because of, her walk with God. And, you know, she watches over the affairs, just her love for her family. She doesn't eat the bread of idleness. I look at that as, you think about the Bible talks about idle time, an idle conversation, which could be filled with gossip, or there's even scriptures that talk about, where, there's laziness, and there's lack of self-control, and there's, all these things that go with idleness. It's when we choose idleness, we allow evil to come into our lives. So, it's just wasted time. It could be, on the tablet or on the phone, continuing to scroll through whatever, and realizing, oh gosh, 2 hours later, I've wasted so much time. That's idle time. and so we should be mindful of those things because Satan is constantly trying to distract us from God's mission for us, to do his will and hear God's voice so we could be spending time with God and listening more for, what does God want me doing? What, with this time he's given me, bless me with, what else could I be doing right now? And it could be reading a book to learn and grow your business better. And sometimes, even with business, we can be tempted to, you know, want to put it off or, and God has put vision on our hearts and he wants us to go after it. And time is a gift. And so we can really think about how are we using our time for God's glory. And so many women do noble things. Oh, before that, in verse 28, her children arise and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. And so because of who this woman is, her strength, her dignity, her integrity, her being mindful of, doing the right thing, doing God's will, her children call her blessed, the way she takes care of them and she meets their needs. And a lot of you, I know, you're meeting the needs of your children. You're meeting the needs of your family. We do that, right? And God blesses that, and her husband also praises her. It makes men very grateful to have a woman who, supports her family and is willing to help financially, and is looking to build up her family and pray for them and go to war for them spiritually. It's a spiritual battle. We constantly, like the video I did a couple weeks ago, we should be in intercessory prayer for our families, for our loved ones, for friends, and people we come into contact with. It's part of our duty, our responsibility as a woman of God. And so he goes on here to say, many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting. So, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. So I look at this and I think about, we all have personalities, some are more charming. They're able to, persuade people and convince people on the outside with words or, the way we look, that we got it all together, or, that we are a woman of God by the way we look, dress, talk. But what is really beautiful to God, what is really stands out in this world and goes against the grain of this society is a woman who fears the Lord. She is to be praised, and so I think about what does it mean to fear the Lord. Just like you would a father in a healthy relationship with a father, earthly father, if you were going to be disciplined, there would be a fear of that because we didn't do what we were supposed to do, right? So in the same way with our Heavenly Father, Abba, there's a godly fear, a respect, for his authority, for him being in our lives and wanting to do his will, not our will, but a godly fear, a love, and a respect, because we know our Heavenly Father loves us and he will bless us and meet our needs, and he's so patient with us. So it is, just the relationship with the Father, with the Heavenly Father that this woman had, that, she should be praised because of that. She stood out because of that. She was able to do God's will because of that. She was able to do all these things, take care of her family, make a difference, know what to pray, know how to take care of her servants, people that were employed by her. She treated them well. She gave them the portions they were supposed to have, So Honor her for all that her hands have done, and let her works bring her praise at the city gate. And this talks a lot about the work of her hands and how God blessed the work of her hands, And she stayed busy, you know, in what God's will was for her, his calling on her life. And she didn't take it lightly. She took it as, right, it's a responsibility that I must complete my assignments that are given to me, is how I look at this. And, she was honored because what her hands had did. And her hands brought good to all that came into contact with her. And she even gave to the poor and met the needs of the poor. And so it's a blessing and an honor to be called, as a woman of God. And God gives us examples in his word. We have Ruth, we have Esther, we have Mary Magdalene, we have so many, Mary, Mother of Jesus, so many women that have gone before us. Sarah, that we can look at and see as a godly example. They weren't perfect, but they were women of faith that wanted to do God's will and answered the call and followed and completed the assignment that was given to them. And so even today, we have that same calling and ability to be honored by God by what we choose daily, to live noble lives, to read the word, to spend time with God is noble. It's a relationship that we continue to work at and know that our Heavenly Father knows what we need and he wants to hear from us. He loves us, he cares, and he wants to lead us and guide us in all his ways and give us the wisdom only he can give us, because he is wisdom, he is love. He has that for us, and we can only receive that when we, go to him continually. I know in the last video we talked about meditating on the word day and night, and even in the middle of the day. It's a continual relationship. And it's a blessing that God is always near and he just wants to hear from us. All right. Thank you for tuning in. God bless. And I will talk to you soon.